Welcome to Argument Basics, a series of very short videos on, shockingly enough, the basics of arguments. So a very good place to start is, what is an argument? In everyday life, and it's not incorrect to use the term this way, we use argument to describe, fights and conflicts and battles, which might involve yelling or might escalate up to, unfortunately, violence. But in the standpoint of academics, specifically philosophy, an argument is not a fight or a battle, it's this. An argument is a set of claims, one of which is supposed to be supported by the other or other claims. So what are claims and what are these parts and chunks of arguments? Well, a claim, kind of informally, is kind of like a statement. So a claim might be something like, or a simple one would be, today is Monday. Or more controversial ones like God exists or God doesn't exist. And a claim could be about anything ranging from the very mundane, like talking about breakfast cereals, to the very, abstract and metaphysical, like talking about, things like time travel, etc. So it can cover pretty much anything. So in an argument, you've got two types of claims. One is the conclusion. This is the claim that you're trying to, if you're making the argument yourself, you're trying to support, you're trying to prove, you're trying to establish as being true. And the point of an argument, philosophically speaking, is to establish that a claim is true. That's the goal. This is different from persuasion, where the goal is to get people to believe something is true, whether it's true or not. So arguments deal in aiming to establish truth. Persuasion deals with trying to persuade people, make them feel a certain way. So we've got the conclusion, which is the point being argued for, what you're trying to support. Arguments have one and only one conclusion. Now, to support this conclusion, what you offer is one or more premises, or premise in the singular. And so this is a claim or evidence given to support the conclusion, why it should be accepted logically. An argument can have many premises. So one conclusion, possibly many premises. Now arguments split into two main flavors. And you can add in a third flavor, which is bad. So there are inductive arguments, deductive arguments, and if you want to add in the bad flavor, the fallacies. So in very basic terms, that's argument basics, a inductive argument is this. So this is in the context of philosophy, because I'm a philosophy professor, and you may hear these terms used differently in other fields, but in philosophy, an inductive argument is one that deals in likelihood, and it involves the logic. So strict definition is, it's an argument in which the premises are intended to provide some degree of support, but less than complete support for the conclusion. Now, intent here is important because you can make an inductive argument which fails, as we'll see in a future video. So it's a matter of intent. And also they provide, a degree of support, but less than complete. And we'll see more of what that means in the future. So inductive arguments, you may wonder, why do we use them? Because they only provide some degree of support. And we'll see in the future, one reason we use them is because we kind of have to. They're often the best we can do. The other type of argument, at least the way philosophers split them up, is the deductive argument. Deductive arguments are one in which the premises are intended, and there's that intent again, intended to provide complete support for the conclusion. Now, as we'll see in the future, the person may intend to make them have complete support, but fail. And in the case of deductive arguments, they try to deal in certainty. So ideally, if you have a deductive argument and it's doing well, you can be certain about things. And again, we'll see why people would use inductive arguments. And the spoiler, the answer is because sometimes it's all we got. The third flavor, kind of the bad flavor, is what's called a fallacy. Fallacy gets defined in a lot of ways, ranging from just being wrong, a false claim, to a formal logical fallacy to informal ones. But to keep things simple, since we're talking about arguments, we'll go with the general argument definition, which is this. In this context, a fallacy is a bad argument. It's an argument in which the premises fail to provide adequate support for the conclusion. And you might recall back, I was talking about like intended to provide some degree or intended to provide complete support. What happens if the intent doesn't come through and it fails? Well, in that case, you could end up, if it's bad enough, getting a fallacy. So argument put kind of, basically is, again, a set of claims. You've got one conclusion that you're trying to prove as being true, and the way you try to prove it is providing evidence, known as premises, to try to show that that conclusion is true. And these divide into inductive arguments, deductive arguments, and if they're bad enough, fallacies. In our next video, we'll take a look at how do you tell when the reasoning is good, bad, or ugly.